I'm your host, Eric Eisenberg. Welcome to Hero Blend number 22. This week we heard some potentially crazy rumors about the future of the DC cinematic universe with 7 potential movies coming out over the next 4 years. There's a lot to talk about, so check it out. How's it going, everybody? I am happy to welcome back to the show Sean O'Connell from Cinema Blend. How's it going, man?
It's wonderful. Good to be with you, as always.
So we have a lot to talk about this week because DC has apparently unveiled, not unveiled, their big plans for their future films through 2018, which is kind of a big deal. We have projects like Shazam, we have Sandman, Justice League, Wonder Woman, Flash and Green Lantern, Man of Steel 2. Like, these are huge projects. Sean, give me your initial feeling about this potential lineup.
It makes me think that they have been doing a lot of things behind the scenes. If, in fact, this schedule is a reality, they have to have a lot of pieces in place that we just don't know about already.
That has to be it.
Yeah, and I think that we've seen some hints in certain stories, like Dwayne Johnson is happy to tease meetings with DC, back to January. Joseph Gordon-Levitt has talked about his Sandman. We hear that there's a Cyborg, and we know Gal Gadot is cast. So I'm thinking that there might be some pieces that they have in place that we just don't know yet, and I'm thinking Comic-Con might be the time that they all start to drop.
They definitely they must have stuff going on, because as you said, if this turns out to be true, that should be the big banner ahead across this entire conversation, which is, if this is true, keep that in mind, every single thing we said. Let's look at this 2016 slate, because, I mean, we always had Batman vs. Superman coming out in May, but Shazam in July and Sandman in Christmas. Shazam coming out 2 months right after Batman vs. Superman and has gotten as far as nowhere as far as we know. That seems a bit fishy, no?
It really does.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that there's a plan in place for all of these characters to be featured. Every time that we talk about this schedule, it's the dates. The dates really hang you up.
The dates are what make it seem impossible.
Has a head start. Marvel has this head start, and they've been extremely ambitious, and they aren't committing to more than 2 a year, which seems smart. So 3 a year, you're right, seems crazy. Unless they have directors in place and a cast that we just don't know about, and it's really hard to keep these secrets. I can't see how they're on that track.
I mean, it's amazing that they were able to keep these 7 projects as quiet as they did. But I mean, just in terms of Shazam, I mean, Batman vs. Superman, or Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, let's be proper, has been in production for months now. Shazam's supposed to come out 2 months later. It's kind of hard to imagine that could actually happen. I do believe, as you said, it is believable that we could have a Shazam movie. I mean, they've developed Shazam movies in the past that have never actually gotten made, but I believe that's possible. I honestly think that Dwayne Johnson could very well be Shazam because it fits perfectly into his spectrum of who he's been talking about with the folks over at DC and Warner Brothers. So it's definitely a wishy-washy project. But Sandman is another story, because that's a film that we've actually heard a lot about. That's a movie that, going back to last year, we've heard quite a bit about in terms of development.
Right, and the thing that we don't know, that one seems like it's going to exist a little bit outside of the Justice League projects.
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so that's fine, because I can almost see that just existing in a way that Guardians almost does right now. It's its own thing. It doesn't have to connect to a larger cinematic universe. When you talk about Shazam, who has to be in place, when you talk about this, they're going to team up Flash and Green Lantern, is that right?
Yeah, Flash and Green Lantern, that's Christmas 2017, apparently.
I mean, these are people who have to be introduced. We're hearing these persistent Aquaman rumors.
Yeah.
We don't know what Zack Snyder has written in terms of how Batman v Superman is going to lay out the chessboard. I mean, it could very well exist as a movie that all of a sudden it makes complete sense why all these films are rolling out. And so there might be a much bigger, plan in place that we're just not familiar with. So I'm almost willing to give Warner the benefit of the doubt, but right off the bat, it seems so aggressive.
Well, one thing, I mean, that's interesting about this list is that if Man of Steel is actually a May 2018 project and kind of that label is taken away from Batman v Superman, that's an interesting development, because that means that that movie is no longer just going to be locked into those 2 characters. Dawn of Justice is obviously a hint at the bridging the gap between Justice League, bridging the gap to Justice League. I mean, obviously, we're hearing a lot of the characters. It sounds like Jason Momoa is Aquaman. That sounds like a pretty much done deal. But at the same time, you're right. These are characters that are gonna the big backstories that are gonna have to be unfurled over a certain amount of time, and they're not giving it that time at all.
And what does it do for the TV properties? We've had this conversation before, but DC has a pretty strong television base. Do they roll in at all, or are they completely separate?
My bet is that they're completely separate, that they're going to be kind of kept in the same way that like Smallville was never going to end up being a big screen Superman. I think that Arrow and Flash are going to be, they're going to stick to, and Gotham too, which is over on Fox, which is its own kind of separate universe within the DC universe on television, but that's its own thing. I think that TV is probably going to stay rather independent, which to a degree, I'm not sure I'm entirely happy with, considering that I am an Arrow fan and I like what I've seen from Grant Gustin, so I think he could be a good Flash. But I do feel like that if these are these big-scale movies, they're not going to bring it to the television show. They're going to get like A-list actors for these parts.
Well, that brings up a big question about, like, we knew that Batman v Superman, the title's such a mouthful.
It's not a good title.
We kind of knew that Snyder was going to go from that right into Justice League, because he's been confirmed into that. Now it feels like they're trying to put these other pieces in around it. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, I was ready to go right from Dawn of Justice into a Justice League movie, and I didn't know that I needed standalone movies. Now, I'm not opposed to them as long as they're planned out right and that they take the time with them, but do you feel they're rushing it?
Well, it's interesting that Shazam is technically Beyond Man of Steel is technically the only solo movie that's going to come out between Man of Steel and Justice League, and with Wonder Woman and then the Flash and Green Lantern movies coming out afterwards. But I mean, it's weird that you're not going to necessarily, like, especially with Wonder Woman, that's just a weird case simply because I'm not sure Gal Gadot, I mean, unless she has a time turner from Harry Potter, I'm not exactly sure how she can film all of these movies. Because, I mean, Wonder Woman and Justice League, they're very much like Batman vs. Superman and Shazam in that they're 2 months apart, and a Justice League movie is going to have quite a bit of Wonder Woman, so if she's off filming her own solo movie as well, I'm not really sure how that's possible.
Right, right.
I mean, but another interesting point on that is that because Wonder Woman and Flash and Green Lantern are coming out right after Justice League within the same year, that also puts a lot of pressure on those characters to perform in Justice League, kind of stand out in a way, and actually like make audiences immediately say, "Oh yeah, I want to see separate movies with those characters." Which I mean, Gal Gadot is completely untested in Wonder Woman. We have no idea how that's going to turn out yet, and we don't even know who Flash and Green Lantern are at this point. I mean, so it's definitely a weird situation.
That's an excellent point, because when they cast Ryan Reynolds, I'm sure they thought they had the beginning of a franchise, and
They must have.
Green Lantern tanked.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, you know, Gal Gadot is going to torpedo Batman v Superman, but what if she's awful, you know? And then you're staking this gigantic gamble on, like you said, untested people. What if we see Affleck as Batman and it doesn't work? I mean, I think it's going to, but what if it's bad? You know, what if there's no chemistry with Henry Cavill? And the experiment's not working. You can't commit to multi-pictures in a short-term deal like this if you don't have the chemistry that Marvel lucked into.
I mean, there is a certain degree of luck. I mean, there's a skill aspect to it as well. But I mean, Marvel has also been developing over a certain number of years, and this putting in such a tight spot it's a very strange approach. Because you're not necessarily giving audiences a chance to react to these characters. You're just kind of putting all the eggs in one basket and saying, nope, this is our DC cinematic universe. You're going to like it, or I guess you're just going to live with it.
It's a direct response to Marvel, though, isn't it? It has to be a direct response to Marvel.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as soon as they started developing a Justice League movie, it was pretty much seen as a direct response to Marvel. But at the same time, to DC's credit, I mean, if you want to look at it, I mean, yes, it's a risky move, but you could also call it a daring move. You could say that, like, they have a lot of confidence in what they're doing. They have a definitive plan, and they are doing something different than Marvel. They're not just following the mold, and that's bold. That's a bold move, and if it pays off for them, it's going to be absolutely spectacular. If it doesn't, then it's a weird situation. Let's just leave it at that. And So let me hear your final thoughts, Sean. Let's. How are you feeling about the status of the DC universe, provided that this schedule is what turns out to be the schedule?
I mean, I'm very excited by it because I'm excited by these characters and the potential for them to show up on screen. I mean, there are people, I'd love to see Shazam on screen. I really do want to see Flash, and I want to see Green Lantern working in a way that we can accept him as a movie character, which is weird because I didn't even mind Green Lantern. I didn't think it was terrible, and I would like to see them build on that. There are so many motivations that I think can be answered by Batman v Superman. If Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice lands with a story that, like I said earlier, maps out all of a sudden the plan is there, we could very well be like, oh, there it is, and now I know why we need to see all these guys, because there's a bigger villain and it needs to get the Justice League. And I'm putting faith in the fact that if they really are going with this aggressive rollout, that they have a plan in place.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. I think pretty much everything right now hinges on Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice doing well, because it is obviously the gateway into the entire universe. I mean, like I said, I'm completely on board. All of these characters that are showing up are characters that I've wanted to see on the big screen my entire life, and the fact
totally.
We're living in a golden age of comic book movies right now. We're actually finally getting these made. I pray it. I as a comic book fan, I want this to work. That's as far as it goes. Sean, thank you so much for joining me again, man.
Absolutely, Eric. Anytime.
Okay, great. Have a great week, everyone.